Chapter 9 Noe. The sound of her feet scratching the pavement and her heavy breathing were the only noises apparent to her. Light clothing and a pair of worn sneakers were all she wore as she made long strides down the pavement. The heat of the morning on her exposed legs and muscled abdomen made no impression on her. Just the road and the thought of completing her daily 3-miler were the only things on her mind. She passed restaurants, bars, shops, and houses without glancing at their names or the patrons emerging from them. Didn't need to. She could almost run the entire route with her eyes closed. Her pace was so swift, onlookers expected to see some wild animal, jaws gnashing, teeth bared, on her heels. To her, the pace was irrelevant. She only wanted to move. Whether she was prey or predator did not enter into her clear-headed state of mind. As she rounded a corner to turn south on 5th Street, a passing cyclist, face deep into his device, emerged from behind an obstructively placed evergreen tree. She sidestepped to avoid the man, feeling rising irritation from his lack of awareness and her broken runner's trance. "Imbecile! Watch where you're going," she said, raising her voice with a slight Mexican accent. The man on the bike swerved, then skidded to a halt at the edge of the sidewalk just in time. He narrowly avoided entering the already busy street, replete with rushing vehicles on their morning commute. Relieved, he breathed a sigh of relief before noticing the woman standing before him. "Oh, discúlpame, Noe. I didn't see you running there." His eyes roamed up and down her body before falling unapologetically on her sweat-glistened breasts. Noe rolled her eyes, then reached out a hand to raise his chin with her index finger. "Gabrielle, hello. I'm up here?" She shook her head, smiling inwardly to herself. He had maintained a lifelong crush on her, an unrequited one-way relationship. One where she only reciprocated in private fantasies in the depths of his mind. She was sure of it. "Ay, Gabrielle, what am I going to do with you?" Despite his constant ogling, she knew he was harmless. A loyal amigo de infancia who provided her with updates about her mother and her large extended family through complex familial networks she never had time nor patience to keep track of. Even though he was 6 years her senior, Gabriel had never quite gotten a handle on his vices and looked as if he were well into middle age. He was not a very big man, but he was tall. A beer gut swelled under his black shirt, like a Bosu ball placed on a flat surface. It did not fit well with his long arms, and when paired with his bad posture, made him appear to be constantly sticking his stomach out. His lips were dry, and his face lacked plasticity, hinting at constant dehydration. His only redeeming quality was his full head of black hair sprinkled with flecks of gray. Combined with the matching bushy black mustache below his nose, it would have made him almost look regal, if Noe hadn't known that he dyed it regularly. Gabrielle's eyes fluttered, then finally focused on hers. It helped to break the spell she had on him and to return much needed blood flow to his brain. I'm sorry, Noe. You know I couldn't help it. Es que eres tan chula. His eyes showed boyish innocence, providing sincerity to his words. Ya sé. That's what you always say, she said, hoping to strike a sarcastic yet playful tone. Judging by the sad response in his eyes, it was a failed effort. Gabriel smiled at her, as if he had not heard the comment. She didn't mean it that way. Don't be so sensitive, he told himself. With great effort, he kept his eyes on her face, allowing himself glances toward her soft lips between blinks. In his eyes, she was an angel, perfect in every way. Blackish brown hair, feminine orange-brown eyes, a slender neck, crazy hot athletic body with a year-round tan. She could have easily been a successful model if she wanted to. But he knew that wasn't her style. Ever since high school, he had been entranced by her beauty. It was the odd name that first piqued his boyhood curiosity. Noelani Acosta? What type of weird name is that? He had thought. A few weeks later, seated next to her in their integrated math class, he had asked her this very question and had received a very direct answer. My mom is Hawaiian, my dad is Mexican. I'm mixed, came her blunt answer. From that day, it took several months. They eventually became friends, staying in touch even throughout her time in the military. When she got out years later and returned to Sacramento, Gabrielle looked her up again. She was just as beautiful, but different. Though they still hung out from time to time, he could tell she had seen some shit while she was in. Whatever it was, she hadn't gotten over it. So, what's up? Noe asked him, hands on hips. Besides getting in the way of my running route. Just headed into the market early. Got a few things to sort and organize before the lunch rush. Cool. Noe moved to resume her run, expecting the chivalrous flourish of his arm he usually offered as a joke whenever she passed by him. This time, though, he remained locked in place on his bike seat. What is it? Something wrong? Concern crept into her voice unknowingly. It's your mother. I spoke with her today. She says she really needs to talk to you. Says it's urgent. Gabrielle's words were delicate, like a doctor giving a patient bad news. Have you spoken with her yet? Noe folded her arms across her chest. No. Her eyebrows slanted, lips pursed. Her breathing became heavy again, despite standing in place for the last minute. She wanted to punch something, anything, and Gabrielle stood within arm's reach. Hey, don't shoot the messenger! He raised his hands in defense. She told me you haven't been returning her calls. And? Entonces qué? Come on, mija. I've known your mother a long time, and I know she's worried about you. He hesitated before continuing. She said she wants you to go and visit her. Noah's nostrils began to flare. She needs to hear this. She said it was important, that she talked to you in person. A visible vein near the side of her left temple began to throb. It looked as if her head might explode at any second. Yet her eyes arced in surprise. She didn't expect to hear that. Gabriel shut up, out of consideration for her and his own well-being. Noe let out a deep sigh to relax herself, as she had been instructed to do so many times in the past whenever she felt overcome by rage. After several seconds, the wave of anger subsided, but threatened to return again at any moment. She managed a flat tone, hoping to sound indifferent. Okay, thanks for letting me know, Gabrielle. I'll give her a call today and see what she wants. The attempt failed. Nope, I'm still angry. Really angry. Gotta calm down. She began her breathing exercises again. They were somewhat effective. Gabrielle smiled at her effort. I know you haven't had a good relationship with her, but Noe, we only get two parents in this life, if we're lucky. You gotta try and appreciate them while they're around. Although she knew that he was right, she couldn't bring herself to express it on her face. Staunch neutrality was her only response. He opened his mouth to say more, but before sound could come out, she forced her way past him, almost causing him to tumble from his bike. From over her shoulder, Noe said, Buen dia, Gabriel. Her eyes scanned from side to side before she stepped off to resume her run. Gabrielle eyeballed her glutes until she turned another corner and vanished from sight. It was difficult watching her struggle. Worse, knowing that she was going through it alone. He and her mother had always tried, but she never accepted the help. Gabriel shook his head, pitying her. Noe's mother sounded scared on the phone. Of what? She hadn't said. But whatever it was something she wanted to share with her estranged daughter. I hope you call her this time, Noe. There might not be much time left. Around the corner, Noe had been aware of the presence of Gabrielle's eyes lingering on her ass while she moved down the block, but didn't dwell on it. Reasons for why her mother desperately wanted to talk to her crowded in her brain, making her forget his wandering eyes. This wouldn't be the first time she urgently needed to speak with her. What the hell could it be this time? Trying to set me up with someone? Or get me to join the family business again? Or could it be something more dire? She felt her chest tighten. The anger was returning again. It always did when it came to her mother. Noe was on the final straightaway of her run. A clear sidewalk. She increased her speed. The boost provided a much-needed catharsis from the cloud of fury hanging over her mind. As she felt her legs beginning to burn from the additional exertion, a small smile drew itself on her face. Her angry runs always gave her the best workouts. The fire from the creaking gas stove burned with a brilliant arrangement of blue, orange, and red. It danced in a controlled frenzy below the iron skillet Noe held with a loose grip over it, heating her lunch. A modest helping of synthetic bacon and eggs from a carton, or, as she liked to call them, fake eggs, sizzled, cracked, and popped, emitting a delicious aroma Cooking them both at the same time wasn't the best way to take advantage of their flavor, but it was much faster and efficient. Standing at the stove, the undulating circle of fire before her sparked wildfires of involuntary memories on the surface of her mind. What the hell does she want? Noe's thoughts of her mother always came in brief flashes. An image of a little girl with arms outstretched, desperate for the kind of love only a mother could give. A teenager turning her back on a pseudo-repentant face. The hours-long arguments during her precious moments of leave. The final physical and emotional barrier erected in her mother's honor. Yet, despite the scorched earth campaign she had waged against her mother's sins, withered clusters of charred patches survived, igniting curiosity, bitterness, and sometimes, on rare occasions, hope. Mesmerized by the flames, it wasn't until the familiar smell of blackened food reached her nose that she realized her breakfast was burning. Shit. With a jerk, she removed the skillet from the fire, whirled toward the nearest open window, waving her free hand violently over the grotesquely burned concoction. They'll need DNA records to identify this. Smoke from the pan choked the kitchen air, filling the tiny apartment within seconds. Noe reached for the knob on the stove and switched it off. It gave her time to set the skillet on the cool side of the stovetop. She exhaled air from her nose, exasperated and hungry. Her ever-present inner critic raised its voice, berating her for subpar cooking skills. How will you ever be able to survive without the military or your family? It mocked. She clamped her eyes shut to force it quiet. It complied. A loud buzz from her device drew her attention to a small glass coffee table in the living room. With quick steps, Noe reached it in time to see Mom calling on the front screen. She stared at it, willing it to shut up with her cold gaze. It obeyed. The living room had one window, and light from the late morning filtered in onto Noe's skin. She stood there for several minutes, hands on the windowsill, letting the heat warm her overworked muscles. The usual view of the gleaming golden tower bridge sitting over the toxic Sacramento River greeted her. It was a distraction from the seed of worry taking root somewhere deep on the scarred frontier of her psyche. The instinct to destroy any attempt at new life there was strong, but she resisted. What if something is really wrong this time? She pondered, more curious than concerned. 15 call attempts in one morning was excessive, even for her uncaring mother. With a decisive motion, she faced the device and commanded it to redial. Her body became rigid, accelerating into a higher gear of anticipation. It was an automatic action, forged from years of military training, readiness, and general awareness of all of the dangers in the world. Although she wasn't in the mood to fight, she would be prepared if the need arose.